I will never forget that night. My name is Dina, a trainee nurse at an old hospital on the outskirts of town. This hospital used to be a major treatment center in the 80s, but now most of the buildings are unused and only one building is still active. The rest are left empty, dark, and rotting. That night was my last night on the night shift. I was scheduled from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Everything went normally until 1 a.m., when the power suddenly went out for a few seconds. When the lights came back on, the atmosphere was different, colder, quieter. Even the EKG machine in the emergency room suddenly beeped even though there were no patients. I tried to calm myself, thinking it was just exhaustion. But then I saw a woman in a patient's gown standing at the end of the hall, her long hair covering her face, her white gown stained with red. I thought she was a lost patient, so I went over to her. But as I took a step, she was gone. I froze in place. Then I heard screams from upstairs, even though that floor had been closed for years due to a fire. I tried to call security on the intercom, but all I could hear was static. And then a whisper, "Help me!" Trembling, I went upstairs. The hallways were dark, and the smell of burning still hung in the air. When I reached one of the former operating rooms, I saw writing on the wall in blood, "We never get out of here." Suddenly, the door closed by itself. I was locked in. The lights flickered, and I saw the shadows of people in surgical gowns standing around me. They were motionless. Their faces were burned. Their eyes were blank. Then one of them came over and said, "We need one more." I screamed, banged on the door, and then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in the ward. My friends said they found me passed out near the stairs upstairs. But I don't remember going back down. I immediately applied for a transfer. But before I left, I took the time to check the old hospital files. And I found something that made my blood run cold. In 1987, there was a fire on the top floor due to malpractice during an illegal operation. A female patient died in a terrible way. The nurse on duty at the time was also named Dina. Her face looked like mine, very similar. Since that night, I often dream of being in the same operating room, surrounded by burning figures. They call my name. "Dinah, it's your turn now." And every morning when I wake up, there is always a mark of an IV drip on my arm that I never know where it came from. My name is Dita, a new nurse assigned to Sumber-Waras Hospital, an old hospital that was built during the Dutch colonial era. The place has a classic architecture with long corridors, dim lighting, and a strong smell of medicine. But there is one thing that has made me curious since the first day of work. Why does the elevator in this hospital have a button for the third floor, even though everyone says this hospital only has 2 floors? I had time to ask my colleagues, but they all just laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. Some even warned me not to try pressing the button for the third floor. However, my curiosity grew. And that night, when the night shift arrived, I finally decided to find out for myself. At around 2 a.m., when the ward was quiet and all the patients were asleep, I entered the elevator. My fingers hesitated, but finally pressed the 3 button. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the elevator shook slightly and began to rise. Even though it had always stopped on the 2nd floor, the elevator doors opened. In front of me lay a long hallway with flashing lights. The walls were dull, with black stains as if burned. The air felt cold, and the stench of blood was pungent. I walked slowly. The hallway was empty, but I could hear faint sounds, like the whispers of someone crying and the irregular heartbeat of a machine. I entered one of the rooms labeled Operating Room 3B. An old operating table was in the middle of the room, covered in reddish-brown stains. Suddenly, the door behind me slammed shut. I turned around and saw the shadow of a person, an old doctor in a bloody surgical gown, standing still in the corner of the room. His eyes were blank, and his face looked like it had been burned. He stared at me, then walked slowly away, carrying a scalpel. I ran out of the room, panicking and nearly falling. The previously empty hallway was now filled with patient beds, with bodies wrapped in bloody bandages, writhing silently. I heard them calling me, "Help us! Please! Don't let us die here!" I pressed the elevator button over and over again, but there was no answer. Then the hospital announcement came over the loudspeaker. I shouted, I'm honored. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a nurse. But the voice kept repeating itself. And suddenly a woman, dressed like a nurse from the 60s, appeared right in front of me. Her face was pale, her eyes were blank, and her mouth was slit all the way to her cheek. She whispered, once you're on the third floor, there's no way back. I don't know how I ended up back on the first floor. All I remember were screaming voices, the walls moving, and the elevator filled with shadowy hands trying to pull me back. When I woke up, I was lying in the nurse's room. They said I fainted in front of the elevator. But strangely, when I looked at the elevator panel, the button for the third floor was gone. And since that night, every time I passed the elevator, I always felt like someone was watching me from the steel mirror on the door. Sometimes when the night was very quiet, I would still hear a voice from the speaker, an emergency call for Nurse Dita to the third floor. But that floor never existed. It never officially existed.